Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes, our weekly review of some of the biggest stories making headlines across the industry. I'm Lily Jamali. This week on the show, the House of Representatives passes a bill that could lead to a ban on TikTok in the U.S. Sam Altman is reinstated to OpenAI's board of directors, and Waymo launches its driverless taxi service in Los Angeles. Joining me this week is Paresh Dave. He is a senior writer at Wired. Happy Friday to you.
Hey, Lily, stoked to be here. These are all super exciting topics.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, too. We always start with our bite of the week, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. So, Paresh, what do you have for us this week in terms of a data point or a number that gives us a little insight into the week?
The one I've got for you is $9 million, or almost $9 million. That's how much TikTok parent ByteDance spent on lobbying Congress last year, which is less than half of what Meta did. And Meta was the 9th biggest spender last year, according to Open Secrets.
Wow, that is a lot of millions of dollars right there. I have one as well, 170 million, but I like yours better. Mine is 170 million American users of TikTok. That is about half of us, I think. You know, quite a lot of people here in the United States are on this app. And of course, those users skew young. We know this. It's a demo that is of interest to advertisers. It's of interest to political candidates this election year. So, and as we saw, there were a lot of angry users calling up their members of Congress when this specter of a TikTok ban came about. Let me ask you this. You know, we saw President Trump, when he was in office, try to ban TikTok. And there was talk of Congress doing this again last year. Why does this issue keep coming up? Why now?
Because TikTok continues to remain a threat in the views of some members of Congress. There's two major issues. One, there's the data security, sort of data privacy issue that, you know, TikTok is gobbling up tons of personal info, our faces, our likenesses of Americans, and that's potentially accessible to the Chinese government. And then two, there's sort of the misinformation, disinformation, information control, basically. Could China pull the levers on the algorithms on TikTok in some way to feed us content that causes a civil war in the US? That's the other big concern. And those threats haven't gone away.
Absolutely. I was just in Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago, and it felt like every conversation that I had there eventually made its way to the topic of China and national security. You know, I also wonder from you, what's your sense of how American tech executives are viewing this debate? You know, it's nice to get rid of competition, you know, or even buy your competition, but this also could open the door, if it moves forward, to more regulation, which we know they don't like.
Yeah. But I think the reason I chose that bite was that, you know, Meta has been pushing for TikTok to be banned. They do also want to see tech regulation. So however it gets done, whether there's more regulation on TikTok or TikTok has to sell to US interests or TikTok goes away completely, Meta benefits. And there's always been an argument that the biggest companies sort of can weather regulations in a way that smaller companies can't. I mean, TikTok is huge, but isn't necessarily Meta, Facebook huge. So, you know, I think many companies are okay with this leading to maybe some sort of regulation that applies to many different companies and not just TikTok.
So, Paresh, how does this end? Because when former President Trump tried to ban TikTok a couple of years ago, the initial push was for an acquisition by Microsoft, and that came off like a giveaway, right? And then, you know, I'm thinking MySpace now. What if you are acquired and you ruin the app, right? What if the person who buys this kind of makes it not nearly as appealing as it is now?
Well, it's unfortunately cynical, but I view this all as sort of election year campaigning, and I don't think that there's going to be a change coming. You know, I don't think this will pass the Senate. We've already seen Senator Rand Paul say that this bill makes no sense whatsoever because we're sort of doing the thing that we complain about China doing, which is censoring technology, censoring platforms, censoring speech by forcing TikTok to sell to U.S. investors. So I don't know if this, it just doesn't feel like this leads anywhere or gets done. And we've seen talk about other types of regulation, like a privacy bill, just go nowhere. And it doesn't feel like there's any more new momentum to get this done.
Yeah, and this notion of a privacy bill keeps coming up in this debate. But you're absolutely right. It just hasn't happened, and the prospects are not looking too good. All eyes on the Senate, though, for sure, which is right now, I would say, giving off, we're looking into it vibes, as in go away and leave us alone. We shall see. All right, well, on to our next story. Sam Altman has been reinstated to OpenAI's board of directors. This is several months after being fired and then quickly rehired as CEO, as you recall, because I think he ruined Thanksgiving for every tech reporter in Silicon Valley. He now has his board seat back. So what does this mean for where OpenAI goes from here?
Yeah, I'll never forget that Thanksgiving. For OpenAI, they're clearly trying to move past this as fast as possible. You could see that by the way that they announced Sam Altman's return to the board and their new board members, and the summary of an investigation. So they announced it late on a Friday, which is a great time to, bury news. They also just released, like I said, a summary of this investigation that they commissioned a law firm to do over what happened over Thanksgiving and why all that drama came to pass, rather than releasing the whole report. There's no new commitment to transparency in what they announced. They said there's some governance changes. They're going to do better going forward, but nothing that sort of leads to more transparency around this very important company.
Yeah. Well, Elon Musk just sued OpenAI for veering away from its original nonprofit mission. Folks will recall that Elon Musk was one of the co-founders of the company before stepping away a couple years ago. Is that mission effectively dead, the one that Elon Musk keeps outlining?
I don't think the mission is dead. I mean, at the end of the day, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and others came together to create a company that was a counterbalance to Google and other big companies that were working on AI technologies. And they sort of wanted to do it in the most beneficially way possible. Those two parts of it, I don't think have changed. What's changed is, OpenAI isn't open sourcing its models anymore. It isn't making them as available. And their argument is that there's a safety concern around that, and that there could be sort of abuse if they allowed too much information about how they were going about developing this. And in some ways, you could argue that goes back to the mission of trying to do this in the safest way possible.
And meanwhile, Elon Musk said his AI startup xAI would open source its LLM chatbot, which is called Grok. And this is days after this lawsuit happens. So this is a move that has been perceived as, it could give the public free access to experiment with the code behind this technology and kind of gets xAI, it aligns them in some respects with Meta, for one. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Elon Musk had no choice but to open source it after he sued OpenAI. It would look kind of weird for him to say, "Oh, OpenAI, you have to open source your models, but my AI company doesn't have to." So it makes sense that he's doing that. And the other part of this that's worth noting is that the EU just made great progress on the AI Act. Which now looks like it'll go into effect, starting next year. And similar to the voluntary commitments in the US, it calls for companies to share more about how they go about developing their models and how they go about making sure that the models are safe and that they're considering all the risks and mitigating those risks in some cases. So the world is trending that direction anyways. And so it's, Elon's move here is not really a surprise.
All right. Well, Paresh, for our viewers and our listeners, has been writing about OpenAI on Wired's website, and we will have a link as well at marketplacetech.org. So check it out. Our final story, Waymo, the autonomous driving tech company owned by Alphabet, has started driverless taxi services here in Los Angeles. This started on Thursday. What is this going to look like, Paresh?
Well, I'm curious to hear if you've taken a ride and what it's been like. But I took one in LA back in November, and it was pretty smooth. It did almost get sideswiped on a left turn where a car sort of veered into our lane.
Oh,
But like I
no.
said, smooth overall. And it even handled a roundabout, which you don't see too many of up here in San Francisco. But in some ways, LA is easier for Waymo to
Mm,
navigate than San Francisco, where it's sort of been the initial home base for Waymo, and where they're giving tens of thousands of rides each week. LA, wider streets, less crazy double parking.
hmm.
Pedestrians are not as much of a thing. Cyclists are a thing, but not as much of a thing, at least in the areas where Waymo is launching in LA.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this sort of validates Waymo's development process, which is start in the hard city like San Francisco first, and then move to other cities. And excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Plus, you're sitting in traffic all the time here in LA. So, what can go wrong there? It is safer when you think about it. I have not taken a ride in a Waymo myself, but I'm always struck when I'm in San Francisco how ubiquitous these vehicles are. And I lived in the Bay Area, and I just, quickly got used to it when I lived there. But now that I don't live there, I'm just like, wow, they are all over the place. And it kind of, I note it every single time that I visit. The thing is, there are going to be some limitations. These cannot go on the freeway in Los Angeles for now. The fleet is also pretty small. It's going to be less than 50 cars. But accidents are still happening. And your experience is kind of interesting too, what you just described with your ride that you took in one of these vehicles. These are mostly fender benders, but, there have been some small injuries to people.
Absolutely. And, we can't forget that what happened last October with Cruz, one of Waymo's
Mm,
rivals, where the car basically dragged a pedestrian, tens of feet, caused very serious injuries. The person was hospitalized for a couple of months. And it led to Cruz basically temporarily shutting down and
yeah.
really cleaning house and resetting its operations. Waymo so far has not had a kind of catastrophic incident like that. But it's possible it could happen at any point. But I think that's why you see the small fleet. I think it's like 50 cars in
Mm,
LA or something, being
right.
very slow and deliberate. They've done this big marketing push in LA, but I was kind of surprised that they only have 50,000-ish people on their wait list in LA,
Mm,
compared to, I think, 200,000 in San Francisco. LA is huge, 10 million people, right, in greater LA. So I'm surprised, like, I think there's still people figuring out what Waymo is. And part of that is that they're going very small and deliberate,
yeah.
trying not to go too fast and run into the problems that Cruise did.
Yes, and Cruise, of course, is the subsidiary of General Motors. The future of that company, really unclear right now, but not looking too good. Well, Paresh, before I let you go, I know you've been writing about this Reddit IPO that's coming up. Give me the elevator pitch.
So yeah, I would say the thing to look ahead to next week is Reddit's IPO. It'll probably be the talk of the town. They're expected to set final prices on Wednesday and then start trading on the New York Stock Exchange on Thursday if all goes as planned. I think will be big concerns from investors about what that volatility will be like on the first day, because Reddit is allowing users to buy into the IPO, and then they can sell immediately. There's no sort of lockup period where they're required to hold on to shares for a while, for those users that buy into the IPO. So it could be a potentially wild day if Reddit becomes a meme stock.
Yeah. And ending the wildest, or the longest, I should say, the longest wind up to an IPO that I've ever seen. We've been
Yeah,
talking
and
about
I'll
this thing for 2 years.
And that it's been interesting because it's sort of allowed a peek into the company in a way that you
Yeah.
typically don't get because they've revised their investor pitch several times over the
Yeah.
last couple of years. So I have another story coming out on that hopefully next week.
All right. Can't wait to read that. Well, thank you so much for coming back. It's great to see you, Paresh.
Thanks for having me, Lily. Had a great time.
Definitely. That was Paresh Dave, senior writer at Wired. Thanks to all of you for watching Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are at Marketplace APM. Daniel Shin produced this episode, and I'm Lily Jamali. This is APM.